Will be our sideline reporter for the Western Conference Finals, and then Cheryl Miller will be reporting on the Eastern Conference Finals whenever that gets resolved this weekend. Our studio will be taking on the road again for all 7 games, and Ernie, Kenny, Shaq, and Charles will all be on the road for the duration. So we're looking forward to that down in San Antonio starting on Sunday, and then over to Oklahoma City later in the week. Also this year, we'll continue with our partnership and our coverage on NBA TV, and all of our announcers at some point will have some sort of appearance on NBA TV as we continue on with the playoffs as they have done. Also, on the digital front, NBA Overtime on TNT will be on NBA.com for all 7 games, and that will include a multi-camera viewing experience for anybody who logs on to NBA.com, where they'll be able to pick their own cameras to be able to view the game. So, along with many other interactive elements on NBA.com. So, with that, we are looking forward to the veterans of San Antonio taking on the young group from Oklahoma City on Sunday. Nate?
Thanks a lot, Jeff. Let's get right to those questions. We'll begin with Brian Mahoney from the Associated Press, followed by Michael Heastan with USA Today. Operator, if you could please open Brian's line.
Hello?
Go ahead, Brian.
Hey, okay, great. Thanks, guys. Let me do a quick one on the East real quick from Reggie and Steve. Just on what a shooter goes like with Ray Allen when the ankles start to go. What's the main problem there?
Do you want to start, Steve?
Go ahead, Reggie.
Oh, okay.
Well, I think mobility, and I can 100% understand what Ray's going through, because I had those same bone spurs towards the end of my career. And, the funny thing is, one day you'll wake up and you'll feel fine, you'll go to practice, and you'll have a good practice, and everything will be good. And then the next day, you feel like you can't walk 2 or 3 steps. So I think it's the inconsistency on how he's feeling with his health that's probably the big thing. But more so, if you look, I think Philadelphia may have figured out something, especially defensively, at continuing to go at Ray, because his mobility just isn't there to where it should be or where it used to be. So that's probably the hardest thing, is his movements at the defensive end.
I would just add to that, the routine is so important as a shooter. I know Reggie had a very regimented, kind of routine before every game. I did the same thing, and I've heard Ray Allen is probably as organized as anybody in terms of his approach to the game. So when you're injured and you can't put in all that work that you're used to, I think it affects your rhythm, and it also affects your mind a little bit. You start thinking, man, I'm not getting the usual work in, and if you miss a few shots, it can kind of get into your head a little bit.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brian. Let's go to Michael Heastan with USA Today, then to Howard Beck, New York Times.
Hi, question for Jeff. Do you have any, with these reports of Shaq possibly becoming a GM with Orlando, do you have any feelings one way or the other about an analyst being on air while he's at least reportedly interviewing for a job with the team? And my second question would be for Reggie or anybody who wants to take it, if they had any thoughts of what sort of a GM Shaq might be.
I guess to answer your first question, Michael, I think it's a compliment to our talent that other people might or might not be interested in them. This certainly is a situation where we're no strangers to at Turner. We've faced it with Steve. We faced it with Doug Collins, Doc Rivers, QB Brown, Mike Fratello through the years. So it's a situation we're very comfortable with. We're fine having Shaq on the air, and Shaq has just been a terrific part of our team. From the beginning, he stepped into a extremely successful and established group, and we're just really proud to have Shaq as part of our team, and look forward to his work during the conference finals in San Antonio on Sunday.
Well, can I follow up with Steve? Does it make any difference, do you think, if somebody's thinking about going to a team, how they might comment on air?
I don't think so. I mean, I think you're just you're just honest. First of all, you're talking about teams that aren't even involved. You're talking about Oklahoma City and San Antonio, Philly, Boston, Miami, Indiana. I mean, they have nothing to do with Orlando. If the conversation does come up, then I think it's more than anything, it's interesting for the viewer to hear what Shaq thinks about Dwight Howard and Orlando. And so, I mean, there's the only way there's a conflict of interest is if he's actually, working for the team and commenting on them. And that then you can get into a situation where it gets, a little bit like with Magic, last week with all of his comments about Mike Brown. I mean, then it starts, you kind of start to blur the lines a little bit. But, this is just speculation, and I think it'll be interesting to hear what Shaq has to say about it all.
Thanks.
Thank you, Michael. Let's go to Howard Beck with the New York Times, then to Mitch Lawrence, the New York Daily News.
Hey, fellas, how you doing? For Reggie and for Steve, I'm just wondering your impressions of James Harden, what you've seen from him in the last year, in particular, his growth, the impact he has. Just anything that stands out about his game, which is obviously kind of still evolving.
Well, I think people underestimate really the size of James Harden. Having a chance to see him up close versus the Lakers in that series. He runs about 6'4", at times 6'5", but his ability to get to the rim and finish plays. Now, I was telling a couple of guys on the crew that he reminds me, especially in that high pick and roll. Once he gets past the center and he gets into the lane, he exposes the ball a lot like how Detlef Schrempf used to do, and he's so strong with holding the ball out, and it entices you to kind of like swing down thinking you are able to strip him, and he's just carrying you up with, up to the rim and getting those and ones. So his growth from his rookie year to now, especially when he's on that second unit, when Durant and Westbrook go to the bench, when it's just him out there and he's the facilitator as well as the scorer, his decision-making, people put him as a shooting guard, but he is a point guard / shooting guard. So it's definitely a big plus, for Scott Brooks when they goes to that second unit and having him out there and his play-making ability. But, you've definitely seen the growth throughout his early career here in the NBA.
Thanks. Steve?
Yeah, just to touch on what Reggie said, I mean, he's really their best passer by far, and that's why he's such a nice compliment to Westbrook and Durant. Those guys really are thinking first and foremost about scoring, and they're really good at it. When Harden comes in, he's looking to score, but he's a terrific passer and kind of gives the defense a little different look with his skill set. So he's fantastic. I think even though he's coming off the bench, I think you could make the argument that as soon as Wade and Kobe kind of move on in a few years, Harden's probably the best two guard in the league.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, let's go to Mitch Lawrence, the New York Daily News, then to Josh Robbins with the Orlando Sentinel.
Hey guys, how you doing?
Good, Mitch.
Good. Hey Steve, I want to start with you, and Reggie can chime in too. But as a former Spur, and you've seen the team kind of evolve over the years, how different is it than the teams that you played on, and what does that tell you about the job that Pop's done with Buford and other people there in terms of kind of turning the team over, maybe remaking it into more of a team that plays in today's style, for want of a better term?
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. Very few coaches are able to adapt and change from what they once were, particularly when they were very successful at it. Tex Winter, my old coach in Chicago, used to say, you coach what you know. And I think that's true for most coaches. With Pop, though, it's like he's ahead of the curve, and he's seen the league evolve, and so he's evolving with it. And the great thing about the Spurs is that they still have the defensive foundation that they've built over the years, and so they're able to shut teams down for 4 or 5 minute stretches. Even though they're not the dominant defensive team, they're still very good defensively. But offensively, this is their best team ever by far. They're explosive. They shoot the lights out. They move the ball better than anybody in the league, and they're totally unselfish. And they don't turn it over either. They just they execute. Every possession is really valued, and over the course of the game, that's pretty difficult. They just wear you out.
I think as long as you have Ginobili, Parker, and Duncan, those pieces will always remain the same, and you can interchange a lot of other pieces around it. And I agree with Steve. What Pop has done with evolving with how the rule changes in the league, and they want more and fast play with no hand checking. He's a risk taker to go in this season and say, I'm going to rest my guys. I don't care what the league or what our record is at the time, how many wins in a row we have. I'm going to rest my guys because I'm looking at the bigger picture. And, to have an 11 or 12 game winning streak and to leave all his guys at home, it just shows you that the big picture is winning another championship. And the trust that he has, obviously we know, with the three I mentioned, but the bench players like Gary Neal, the rookie Kawhi Leonard, you bring Steven Jackson back, who's had an up and down time in a few other places, but to integrate him in this system, they're deep, they're obviously well coached, they have veteran leadership, and a lot of people understand they're a youthful team. You put Danny Green and Kawhi Leonard out there, Patty Mills, Splitter, these guys are in their 20s, so people keep thinking of Duncan and Ginobili and Parker, who just turned 30, that they're old, but they've got a lot of young pieces around them.
And just to follow up, Marv, the challenge of announcing with this crew?
Well, that is always something that is on my mind. Mitch, as you well know, you've brought that up a number of times when we've... Yeah. No, it's, just having guys like Steven and Reggie with me. I mean, nothing is missed. As you can hear from the answers here in terms of dealing with style or injuries or whatever happens, it's really a pleasure. We've been doing it in the Western Conference or Eastern Conference Finals the last few years, and to me, watching San Antonio, and Steve and I were talking about this the other day, and we do often chat off the air when Steve isn't tied up, doing a radio sports interview. It's reached the point that he now calls radio stations and asks, "Do you need a guest for the day?" But we were talking about comparing the Spurs to the Knicks of the early 70s in terms of San Antonio's ball movement and intelligent play, and how Greg Popovich and R.C. Buford have assembled a team that is so deep and, in fact, deeper than those Knicks teams were, and can match up, in a number of different ways. And the matchups in this series are really going to be intriguing. It's a major test for both with the big threes, and in Oklahoma City's case, a guy like Serge Ibaka. So from a broadcast point of view, it should be a terrific series. We love the crowd reaction in both Oklahoma City and San Antonio. So really look forward to it.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Mitch. Let's go to Josh Roberts with the Orlando Sentinel, then to John Rhodey with the Oklahoman.
Thank you very much. I'd like to start with Jeff and then ask a follow-up question for Steve. Jeff, has Shaq informed you or your colleagues that he is definitely meeting with the Magic?
I have not spoken directly to Shaq, Josh. So once again, we'll see what plays out here. But we're certainly looking forward to having him this weekend. And like I mentioned before, he's doing a great job with us and continues to grow with Charles and Kenny. And I think you can tell, the nature of it, the way he answers questions now is, they're starting to really get into it with each other, which is terrific. But to answer your question, I've not spoken to him directly now.
And Steve, have you ruled out a possible return to an NBA front office? And if not, would you consider the Magic?
You know what? I'm really happy doing what I'm doing right now, and I'll never rule it out. I mean, there's you always keep the door open for the future, but I have no intention to go anywhere at this point in my life, and I haven't heard from the Magic anyway. But no, it would not be something that I would pursue.
In other words, he doesn't want an age 5 years again like he was doing with the Phoenix Suns. I took a lot of stress off of him. He's just now getting his color back from all those trades and non-trades. So to answer your question, he's very happy, okay?
Thank you, Reggie.
Yeah, thanks, Reggie. Thanks, Steve and Jeff. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Josh. Let's go to Don with the Oklahoman, then to Ben Bolch with the LA Times.
Yes, my question is for Steve. Steve, a lot will be made about Sam Presti now in charge of the Thunder and whether or not he has a quote-unquote San Antonio Spurs model. Do you think that's going to be overblown throughout the series, or how do you view each franchise?
Well, there's no question that the influence from San Antonio is huge. Sam started out as an intern there and, really learned everything he knows from the Spurs, and it's, let's face it, it's probably the best model that you can try to pattern your own franchise after. So, yeah, I think it'll be a big story. I think the story has been told, but now that the two teams are facing each other on the big stage, I think it will definitely be told, and it's a good story. I mean, he's done an amazing job, and I think he's really laid that foundation and made the right picks, and established the way the organization is going to go about its business and embrace the community. And I mean, you can see, I mean, they have not skipped one step there, and Sam deserves a ton of credit.
Quick follow-up, if I could, for both you and Reggie. Steve, what do you think of? First word comes to mind when you think of Pop playing for him, and Reggie, first word comes to mind when you're playing against him.
First word. You want a one-word answer?
Well, any words as it takes.
Yeah. The way I describe Pop is that the reason he's so successful, I think, the way he manages his players, and it's because he is really, really fun and funny and outgoing, but there's always that part of you that's a little afraid of him. And so you get that incredible balance between somebody you want to work for and you enjoy being around every day, but there's no doubt who's in charge, and there's no doubt that you got to stay the course.
My one word would be wish. I wish I could have played for him. I had an opportunity when he was the assistant coach under George Karl during the World Championships in Indianapolis, and it was the best experience I ever had. And just to have a chance to sit down and talk to him and rack his brain and see how he prepares, yeah, it's wish. You wish you could have played for a coach like that.
Thanks, fellas.
Thank you. Let's go to Ben with the LA Times, followed by Scott Howard Cooper with NBA.com. Okay, let's go to Scott Howard Cooper with NBA.com, then to Mary Schmidt-Boyer with the Cleveland Plain Dealer. Operator, will you please open the line?
That person is no longer connected.
Oh, okay, thank you. Let's go to Mary Schmidt-Boyer with Cleveland Plain Dealer, then we'll go to James Ducklin with ProBasketballTalk.com.
Mary Schmidt, your line is open.
Okay, sounds like we don't have any questions there. Let's go to James with ProBasketballTalk.com.
Hey guys, how's it going?
We'll keep it in the family there with Jacob Noble, also from the same outlet.
Hey, how's it going, guys?
Good. How you doing, James?
Hey, this is, I guess, for the players. With Russell Westbrook playing at the high level he's been playing at, and the way that the Spurs were able to slow down Chris Paul in the semis, how do you see San Antonio dealing with Westbrook, and what kind of series do you expect from him?
Well, I think it's a totally different matchup. What really helped San Antonio in that Clipper matchup is that the Clippers don't have a big guy who can space the floor. And so the Spurs had basically 2.5 guys on Chris Paul that entire series, and they could funnel him right into their help and not worry about, DeAndre Jordan or Reggie Evans shooting the ball. And so now that it changes, the spacing changes. I would think that San Antonio will try to play a similar style when Ibaka's on the floor at the 4. But when the game goes small and Durant is at the 4, now everything changes help-wise, and so the Spurs are going to have to change their coverage completely, and there will be much more room for Russell Westbrook to work with. The other thing is that Westbrook's different from Paul. Paul is more about pace and angles, and Westbrook's more about explosion and just blowing by you. And so it's a little bit of a different challenge. I will say this. I think Tony Parker's had by far the best season of his career, but a big reason for that is his defense. He's been phenomenal defensively this year, showing more effort than ever before. He really took on the challenge of guarding Paul, and I think he looks forward to the challenge of Westbrook. It's going to be an amazing matchup.
Yeah, that obviously would probably be the featured matchup of this series, the 2 point guards. And yes, Tony Parker has improved defense, but I think he is really going to attack Russell Westbrook offensively. He's had one of his best games this season when he had 42 points and 9 assists versus Westbrook and OKC in one of their 2 wins versus the Thunder. So, how do you attack a prolific scorer? Well, you put him on his heels and make him work at the defensive end. And Tony Parker has done that all year, having a career season at both ends of the floor. But I think offensively, this is really Tony Parker's team now. Tim Duncan shows glimpses, Ginobili at times, but, from an offensive standpoint, Tony Parker's in his prime. And I think the one thing that he's going to want to do in this series is to continue to put Russell Westbrook in the defensive stance, moving back. And I think if he can tire him out while he's at the defensive end, I think that will help. Because you got to remember, the Thunder, they got the highest scoring trio at almost 68 points a game. So if you can bring Russell down to 18 to 20 points, that's a win if you're Popovich. And the only way you're going to do that is make him work at the defensive end.
All right, thanks, guys.
Thank you. Let's go to Jacob, and then we'll go to Dwayne Price with the Fort Worth Star-Telegram. Okay, I'd like that operator to open up Dwayne's line, please, and then we'll go to Dylan Murphy with Dime Magazine.
Yes, this is for Reggie or Steve. 5 out of the last 13 years, the NBA champion has come from the Southwest Division. Could you guys speak to the point that maybe the Southwest Division is becoming one of the power divisions of the entire NBA?
Go ahead, Reggie. Well, you look at all the teams that are in that division, absolutely. Let's just start with Oklahoma City. To be one of the youngest teams, and just think, 3 years ago, this team started off 3-30, and that's with Russell Westbrook, Kevin Durant, Nick Collison, and you fast forward to today where if it wasn't for San Antonio's last 4 weeks of the season, they very well could have had the number 1 seed in the Western Conference. So you just look at that Southwest Division and all the teams on a nightly basis, you got to bring it. And I think definitely OKC does that. Well coached, they're deep, and the Western Conference alone. That's why there's a big difference to me other than Miami and maybe Chicago in the Eastern Conference, each and every night, if you play in the Western Conference, you're going against a very high caliber team.
All right, so the question was about the West versus the East in terms of the conference strength. Is that right?
No, in terms of the Southwest Division.
Southwest Division in particular.
Correct.
Yeah. I mean, it's, you've had two of the strongest organizations in basketball with Dallas and San Antonio in that same division. And I know that divisions were realigned, a few years back, but I think it's more coincidence than anything. You just things usually go in waves and phases, but in this particular case, you had two very, very special players in Dirk and Tim, who happened to reside in the same division and grow up in really strong organizations that knew how to sustain their success. So, you throw that in with the emergence of Memphis and. Houston's usually been a pretty solid team too. Yeah, that Southwest has probably been the best division.
One follow-up question for you, Steve. You played for Pop and won a title with him in '99. I know the guy gets respect from the guys who know the NBA, but it doesn't seem like he gets it nationwide. Had he won 4 titles in 9 years in New York, LA, Chicago, or Boston, everybody would be ready to put him in the Guinness Book of World Records. Could you speak to that?
Well, I think he likes it that way, first of all. He's gotten the Coach of the Year award twice, and both times he raced out to the floor, grabbed the trophy, threw it to somebody else, put his head down, and walked back to the huddle to coach the game. I mean, he doesn't want the accolades. Most of that is just the fact that San Antonio is a small market, and the team, there's never a whole lot of drama. Tim Duncan doesn't give you much in terms of anything to write about. David Robinson, even though he was very outgoing, there was never any drama. So it's just they're a machine, and I think that's the way Pop likes it. And I think he actually enjoys not being out in the spotlight all the time.
Thank you.
Hey, you guys, I'd like to pause for one moment. I know Mark has to go. I really appreciate your time this afternoon. Are there any closing comments you'd like to make before taking off? Sounds like you may have done so already. Well, I appreciate him being on the call.
No, I'm here. I didn't hear what you said.
Thank you very much for joining the call, Marvin.
Oh, thank you. This is an official goodbye. Thank you. I've enjoyed listening to the guys.
Marv, that was some of your best stuff.
I thought so. Yeah,
I was really impressed with you.
I thought so. And I'll try to pick up the next hour on my cell. All right, guys. See you in San Antonio. Thank you.
See you later.
Okay. Bye.
Let's continue with Dylan Murphy with Dime Magazine and Matthew Lewis with the True Hoop Network.
Hey guys. So this question actually would have been for Marv as well, but so Steve, you recently wrote an article on Grantland.com about raising the NBA age limit. You think it should go up to 20. So Regio's sort of wondering how you felt about that, and whether you saw a difference between players who came out of college and had a few years of college experience versus guys who came straight from high school.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm torn on this because we see tennis players, start when they're 17, 18. Obviously, golf prodigies start early. I know this because I was fortunate and I wanted to stay my 4 years at UCLA just because I was having a good time, and you learn so much people and life skills while you're in college. Now, having said that, that shouldn't deter, or someone shouldn't tell you you don't have an opportunity to make a living and help support your family if you have the skill set to do that. If any of these guys were, geniuses where they could work for Apple or Facebook or whatever at 17 and 18, you can't tell me none of those people would hire those people for a certain amount of money, and they could, if you were a famous celloist, you could make a music or an album. So on that standpoint, I think people should have an opportunity to make a living. Now, broadcasting and watching the NBA, a lot of these guys aren't ready from a mental standpoint, whether it be basketball-wise, basketball development skills or even off the court related issues. So that's why I think 2-3 years would be great. I kind of like it if it was like baseball. If you sign a minor league contract or if you're drafted and you decide to go to college, then you got to go to college for 3 years. If not, you have the opportunity to go play. But I'm sure that's something David Stern and the rest of the Players Association, they're going to wrangle about to finish out the bargaining agreement. But my personal standpoint, if you're good enough to play and that's what you want to do, you should have the right to do that. But I understand where people are coming from a basketball standpoint. I would say 80% of these guys aren't ready really to become men.
And Steve, just as a quick follow-up, what kind of reaction did you get? People agreeing with you, disagreeing with you? What sort of response did you get from your article?
I got a lot of calls from college coaches, which is ironic because the article was really taken from the NBA's perspective. I think the rule would undoubtedly help the college game, but there's so many angles that you can take. I wanted to avoid that angle and just cut through all the clutter and get right to the point of this being about the NBA and the business's best interest. A lot of feedback. Some positive, some negative. I was fine with any of it because the whole point was just to get people talking about it and to really think about it and examine it. But the college coaches, I heard from a lot more college people than NBA people on the article.
All right, thanks. Thank you. Let's go to Matthew Lewis with the True Hoop Network, followed by Michael Lee with the Washington Post. Okay, let's continue with Michael Lee, Washington Post, then to Michael Tillery with the Starting Five. This question is for Steve. Steve, I wanted to ask you just a question about just the Pop and Duncan relationship and just what is it about the two of them that has allowed this to work? Because you usually don't see coaches and players sticking together as long as they have. What is it about their personalities or just their makeup that has allowed it to be work and be so successful over the past 15 years? Hello? Steve, did you hear that question?
I'm sorry, can you hear me?
No, yeah, I hear you.
Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, Pop is great because he's constantly saying publicly that none of this would work without Tim and Tim's allowance of Pop coaching the team. And Pop's right, but it's great that he communicates that because Tim hears that, and so there's a tremendous amount of trust involved. But I think it's their personalities. They blend very well. Tim is very mild-mannered. He's very mellow. He's competitive, but not overbearing with his presence and his personality. So Pop provides that presence and that leadership for the team, and I think Tim embraces that. But what I talked about earlier, too, I think with Pop gives him that staying power, just the fact that he's a genuinely good person who cares about his players, who cares about their families, who's funny, smart, he keeps things interesting, and he still has that incredible presence where there's you really respect him and fear him a little bit. So it's the two of them are really the perfect fit.
Yeah, and to follow up, I've talked to a couple of players, and they've all talked about how the first time they saw Pop yell at Tim, and that just like there was no separation. Like it doesn't matter who the player is. Like he's going to get his message across. He doesn't treat anybody differently. Did you notice that too in your time there?
Oh, no question. Both Tim and David, Pop would just light into those guys if they weren't competing. I remember several halftime speeches or post game where Pop was coming out of his shoes, just lighting into those guys. And so the reason the whole thing worked is because they accepted it. And that's a tough thing to find these days, is that maturity level of your stars. And that was, one of the points that I was making with that article I wrote. Even the stars these days, the great players who came straight out of high school, their ability to allow for coaching and to be coached has been compromised by not spending time in school. You look at the maturity of Tim and David and their college experiences. I think that prepared them, and their family background and just the the way they were raised. But I think it's an incredible dynamic in San Antonio that really goes back to Tim and David early for allowing Pop to coach them, which obviously sets the tone for the whole organization.
Thank you, Michael. Let's go to Michael Tillery with starting five, then to Barry Janoff with New York Sports Journalism.
How are you guys doing? Could you talk about the challenges of going against three killers in Westbrook, Durant, and Harden, and how that puts pressure on your game plan defensively?
Well, again, the highest scoring trio in the NBA this year, almost 68 points. And the one thing about the Thunder, they are a jump shooting team. So when they have their jump shot going and they're making shots, they're pretty much unbeatable, because between Westbrook and Durant and Harden, all three can take you off the dribble. They all can get into the paint, and they all can knock down threes. More so Harden and Durant. But when you've got to always account for three players, and then two start the game, and then you have a third coming in at certain junction, it just makes it so much difficult on your defense. But the key is going to be able to keep them out of the paint and to contest those jump shots. I think if you can do that, that's going to be the challenge for Scott Brooks, because I've always felt he could really put Durant at that mid-post level, because at that 6'9", 6'10" frame, he's one dribble, he's in the paint. And I've always hoped that he would develop somewhat of a back-to-the-basket game, because if he does that, to me, three-time scoring champ, he's already hard to stop offensively. But if you can add that to your game, that just takes him to another level.
And as players, could either of you or both of you speak about the preparation getting through the Western Conference of being on the Western Conference Finals, being on the precipice of the NBA Finals?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question? The preparation for the teams?
The preparation for you as players, speaking as NBA players getting into the Western Conference Finals.
Well, I think the thing with the playoffs is that, to win the NBA championship, you got to win 4 rounds of playoffs. It takes almost 2 months. And there's a lot of stress involved and emotion. And you see the way these series go. I mean, the Indiana series, for example, right now, it gets emotional, it gets testy, the swings up and down, and that's just one series. So by the time you've advanced to the West, or, to the conference finals, you've been through it for about a month. And so you're either really stressed out or you're kind of accustomed to it, to the routine. And I think the teams that do the best are the ones that have sort of adapted, that are used to being there. I think the experience helps, having been there, just to kind of deal with all the scrutiny, the daily scrutiny from the media, from the fans, the ups and downs, everything else. And I think these teams are both pretty experienced. Obviously, the Spurs extremely so, but for Oklahoma City, I believe this will be their 7th playoff series in the last 3 years. So you can see their maturity level against the Lakers. I think they're ready.
I will say this: stress is good, because we wouldn't do this occupation, and everyone would do it if the stress level wasn't so high. Steve's been in so many NBA finals and won so many championships and conference finals. I was in 6 conference finals and 1 NBA finals. And to me, when you get down to the Final Four situation, the Eastern Finals or the Western Finals, to me, that series is the hardest to win, because once you get to the finals, usually, you somewhat excel because, now you're the final 2. That series will take care of itself. But knowing you're one of 4 teams that could possibly move on and you're in that Final Four realm, to me, that series is the hardest, because you could see the light at the end of the tunnel, you can see the tape at the finish line, and you're almost there. And whether it's a loose ball, a long rebound, a missed free throw, a missed assignment, it's that little thing that prevents you from being on center stage with the world watching you, to me, that's the toughest part, is when you get to the conference finals.
Sounds like a guy who lost several conference finals.
A whole lot of them, Steve. A whole lot of them. That was my Reggie Miller vent right there.
Thanks, guys. Thank you, Michael. Let's go to Barry Janoff. Then we're going to take one or two more questions. We'll go to Jackson Rudd with Salt City Hoops, and then to Fran Blindberry with NBA.com. Go ahead, Barry.
Hey guys, thanks for your time. Two questions, if I could. The first, where do we find a compromise between Larry Bird calling his team SOFT and the NBA handing out the Miami suspensions? And the second question would be reports about Stan Van Gundy and Jerry Sloan possibly returning to the NBA. What you foresee of them coming back into the league?
I'll go ahead with the first one. I think there's a big difference between being dirty and being tough. You know, I don't think Larry Bird was talking about, when he said soft, he wasn't talking about, you know, them throwing more elbows or anything like that, or committing more flagrant fouls. I think he was talking about responding to the competitiveness of the game. And they got blown out in that second half. They looked disheartened. You know, they lose Granger, and all of a sudden there's no life. I think that's what he was talking about. And there's, you know, being tough is more about competing and, you know, being in the right place and having good possessions and sticking to the game plan. That's the kind of toughness he was talking about.
And I will say, good for Jerry Sloan, good for Stan, good for Mike D'Antoni. All three of those coaches being mentioned, you know, for those slots, possibly in Charlotte. I mean, these are guys that are proven winners, and I think all three of them are good for our league. So whatever openings are going to be, I'm sure those three names will be mentioned. And, you know, I hope to see Jerry Sloan again. I really didn't like the way it ended for him in Utah, and I think he wants to come back and show people that he still has it.
All right, thanks a lot, guys. Good luck with the finals.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Barry. Let's go to Jackson with Salt City Hoops, and then to Fran with NBA.com if either of those, if either have questions.
Yeah, I have one question for you guys. If you're going to compare this Western Conference Finals matchup to like another series you've seen in the past, which one would you pick?
Oh, that's interesting. I hadn't really thought of it in those terms yet. I think the interesting part of the series to me is that it's really two contrasting styles. You know, Oklahoma City beat you off the dribble. They beat you at the point of attack, and the Spurs really beat you with the pass, you know, once the penetration is made. And so it's really different styles. But in terms of, you know, kind of a matchup, I think maybe what it reminds me of a little bit is the Dallas-Miami series a year ago. You know, Dallas really beat Miami with unbelievable execution and shooting, and they eventually wore out the Heat with, you know, with penetration, spreading the floor, moving the ball, making the extra pass, whereas Miami was trying to beat Dallas off the dribble more in an individual way. So that would be my comparison.
Yeah, I don't know if I can necessarily compare, you know, teams that Steve and I used to play against and with versus these two teams, but I will say this, that from a television broadcast position, we couldn't have asked for two better teams. You know, obviously you got the number 1 and 2 seeds in the Western Conference, but it was really these two teams from day one that really separated themselves in the Western Conference. And for it to come down for all the marbles to move on to the NBA Finals, you know, to have the two highest scoring teams in the NBA, both are well coached, and the type and caliber of players. You got the young guns of OKC Thunder, who are somewhat new to this stage, even though they were in the conference finals last year against the defending, the world champs, the Dallas Mavericks. And you have a team in the Spurs, over a decade of excellence. So, from a broadcast standpoint, having the best seats in the house at center court and have a chance to call this is this is what you ask for and dream of, to have, you know, the two best teams, 1 and 2, go at it.
Great. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Jackson. Let's go to Fran with NBA.com if he has a question.
Reggie, you spent your whole career in the Eastern Conference. Steve, you were on both sides of it. Here we have, in the East, we got scores again in the 80s and the 70s even. And Reggie, like you said, you get the young guns and the Spurs, highest scoring team in the league. Which one, as a player, which one did you just enjoy playing in more? Which conference final would you like to be playing in? I mean, I know we don't have the East set up yet, but just the way things are going. And,
loved it.
Either one, you got to make a pick?
Sorry, Fran. Loved it. The East. I love the 70, 80 games. I know people think it's boring and they hate it. I love the holding, hitting, grabbing, knocking you down to the ground. The hard fouls, not dirty, the hard fouls. I love all that. I love that Indiana-Miami series, and I love Boston-Philly, that every possession means something. You look at Philadelphia, the youngest team of the 16 playoff teams. They defeated the number 1 seed in Chicago, minus obviously Noah and Rose, but they still had to find ways to win that. Excellent Game 6. And now they're going to 7 games against, everyone was saying, oh, the Boston Celtics are going to beat them at 4 or 5 best, and now you're going 7 games. So, and every game has been, 72, 70, 75, 76. I love the East. Don't get me wrong, up and down is great, but there's something to be said when you can put hands on someone, and I just love the physical play. So I'll always lean towards the Eastern Conference and the physical play.
Steve?
Come on now, where did most of your championships come from, Steven?
Yeah, well, I can tell you one thing. I wouldn't want to chase Russell Westbrook around. On the other hand, I wouldn't mind getting a few open shots.
That's true.
I would much rather, I can tell you one thing, I would much rather broadcast this series, the one we're doing. Although, Miami-Boston would be interesting. Miami-Philly would be probably hand-to-hand combat, but I really enjoy when there's offensive movement and flow and rhythm, and that's why I love watching the Spurs. I mean, they're just the way they play is really fun to watch, and so I'm looking forward to the series.
Okay.
Thank you, Fran. Thank you once again to everyone for joining this afternoon. Please see today's press release with additional information on our coverage throughout the Western Conference Finals. And if for some reason we didn't get your question today, please follow up later today or throughout the remainder of the playoffs, and we're glad to try and accommodate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Nate.
Little Stevie, I'll see you in the Riverwalk.
Sounds good, Reg.
Take care, buddy.
Be well.
Okay. Jeff, Banks, Mississippi, I'll holla.